Take our seats. Thank you all for joining. And thank you for that terrific panel. It's just been so wonderful to see the mix of leadership from around the world and how important at the state level it is for us to partner now more than ever with other countries and states around the world. It's really the way we're going to win and the way we're going to succeed in making this vision of 100% in electrification happen. So I'm David Hochschild with the California Energy Commission. We're really honored to be joined today by the head of the UC system, President Janet Napolitano, who has done something quite remarkable and noteworthy that I want to just begin by thanking you for, which is to set the goal for the UC system to get to carbon neutrality by 2025. That is a landmark goal, and let's give credit where credit's due, because decisions like that are not easily made and the stakes are very high. I'll just say by way of introduction, my mother is a professor at UC Berkeley in sociology, and so my indoctrination into the strengths and benefits of the UC system began as a baby. She used to take me in a little carrier to the sociology department. But you know, having watched the UC system, while I didn't attend myself as a student, just observed this crown jewel of the state of California and its benefits. It's been remarkable. I was just sharing with Janet a few minutes ago that I came out of the solar industry. I was in Silicon Valley in the solar sector, and the company that I was in has now kind of spun out and become the largest solar tracker company in the world. And all of the top talent in the engineering, every single person developing the technology had come out of the UC system.
That's great.
And no, it's a tribute. It's a tribute to you, yes. And now we see from the Energy Commission's perspective just the incredible value of the research that's happening across all the campuses. I'm particularly grateful to UC Irvine for hosting us today, all the good work happening here. And let's give it up for UC Irvine. And also our co-conspirator in making this conference happen, Dave Austin from UC Santa Barbara. We want to recognize him. Thank you. So let's begin, if we could, with this commitment that you've made. What do you see the implications and benefits of that being, both for the UC system and beyond?
So we set the carbon neutrality goal by 2025, knowing that it was an aggressive goal, but with the vision that if you have an aggressive goal, you could unite kind of the power of the university to really get behind it. And that begins with our researchers and our researchers across the campuses. There are 10 campuses. 5 academic medical centers and 3 of the national laboratories are all within the UC system. You know, educate the next generation while we are doing that. And also set an example for the state, the nation, and the world about how a large institution takes on a goal like carbon neutrality. And puts it on a timeline so that you're really pushing to get there.
Mm-hmm. Can you share a little bit about what you saw as the biggest challenges in making that commitment, what the pushback and the debate was to get to that point?
Well, I think the pushback was the fear that it would be too expensive, that it would require too much by way of investment. But as we work our way through, we find that we're actually saving money. You know, by, for example, on solar, we now on our campuses produce 10 megawatts of solar, and we are now saving money on those solar installations. By looking at energy efficiency and the research that underlies energy efficiency, we're now avoiding costs by way of energy efficiency. But it's not to say that there will not be and need to be some major investments moving forward. But the initial pushback was economic.
Interesting. Okay. We heard earlier this morning from Senator Kevin DeLeon, who authored the 50% renewable energy mandate that's now the law by 2030 in California, and has now introduced 100% renewable energy legislation. And we were remarking on how the things that feel impossible today become inevitable tomorrow. And so I think you've created a template here that hopefully will spread to other universities and become the new normal. I wanted to ask you, you've also served as a governor in Arizona, and we're in a very perilous political moment on many levels, but one in which states can play really the leading role now in pushing this clean energy future. And I'd like to hear your thoughts a little bit about the role, from your perspective, having been both as a governor in Arizona, but also been in the federal government as a cabinet secretary under President Obama, your perspective on the state's roles and what in particular we ought to be focused on now in terms of protecting states' abilities to do the kinds of things we need to do on climate and clean energy.
Well, I think, and California, as in so many things, is leading the way. I think that states can set their own goals. I think states can set themselves up to be partners in terms of the incentives that need to exist to meet those goals. I think universities and public universities have a very powerful role to play. And when you're talking about a state as large as California, with the sixth largest economy in the world, it really does have the power, no pun intended, to go its own way. You know, on the federal side, what we're watching is the disinvestment from research, and particularly research that goes to climate science and climate change. And that is research funded by the Department of Energy, and it's also work done under the aegis of the EPA. You know, we are going to have to be talking with our members of Congress about the importance of that support for research and for science, because you know, California can go its own way so far, but the federal government definitely has a role to play and sets a huge template, particularly on the research agenda.
I'd like to ask you a little bit more about that, because we are in this political moment where sort of the very notion of fidelity to truth is seeming to be challenged in some forums, and that you know, we're a state that believes in truth, that believes in science, and that believes in research and invests very heavily in it. But as you point out, so much of the resources that make this possible, whether it's through the UC system or through our labs like Lawrence Berkeley, or Livermore, et cetera, depend on these federal resources. But I think we have all told 52 members of Congress. You know, it's something like 12% of all the members of Congress are from California. What do we need to do to make sure that we're fighting for the resources that we need to continue to lead on science, and that the stakes are made clear of what happens if we fall short?
Well, I think that we obviously need to be talking with our members of Congress, particularly those in the majority party, and delivering not only the science message, but the economic message that a renewable energy economy is a job creator, and associating that kind of support and investment in renewable energy with local economies, you know, what members of a district really pay attention to, and demonstrating that linkage between new companies that are developing new technologies and the jobs they create, the construction-related jobs that are created in the renewable space. You know, all of that goes into, I think, effective messaging with Congress. But it's going to be difficult. I'm not going to pretend. When the executive branch is sending the message about, you know, anything that says climate change is bad, and, you know, websites get taken down, and sends a budget up to the Congress that disinvests in the Department of Energy. I think they take close to a 20% hit. NIH, which is National Institutes of Health, which is not so much in renewable energy, but it takes another 20% hit. You know, that's a powerful message for the executive branch to send. And so we are really fighting against the winds of that in order to protect the value of science and the research that goes on.
Right. You know, in particularly, I want to make a plug for the early stage research, because so much of the seed planting that happens, which is actually the hardest oftentimes to raise money for. Investors are interested in the easy wins, but you look at just even the invention of the solar cell in Bell Laboratories in 1954, and you know, that was a $100 watt technology today, at that time, and today we're down to 30 cents a watt, and installed you know, projects are bidding into the RPS at 3 to 4 cents a kilowatt hour, lower even in some other countries. But none of it's possible without the early work.
The University of California, we manage about $100 billion worth of investment dollars, and we've set aside $1 billion of that over the next 5 years to invest in early stage technologies. And we've set aside an additional $250 million to invest in early stage technologies that are arising out of the University of California ecosystem. So we're trying to put some of our economic muscle behind the goal, which is to be 100% renewable energy.
Mm-hmm. I want to just stay with this theme for a moment about the communications side of this, because there's clearly a great deal of success on innovation and research that's happening, but the message getting across about the value of that. You have an audience of thought leaders from a number of different sectors. What are specifically the themes you'd like to see elevated, the stories that, the untold stories maybe, that ought to be being told more publicly about the value of this research in particular?
Well, you know, I think nothing succeeds like success.
Yeah.
And developing a narrative and having a narrative about how this investment here created this new technology, which resulted in this beneficial impact on the climate, which is a moral imperative, among other things. And how it, as I mentioned before, how it was a net job creator in a particular area. So, you know, connecting that basic research all the way through and telling those stories, I think there's real power to that. And I think anything that undercuts the myth about renewable energy and the myths that have developed about it is very valuable.
You know, to that point, Secretary Perry, Energy Secretary Perry, recently said in an interview that the Trump administration is exploring the possibility of seeking to preempt all state renewable energy laws on grounds that renewable energy threatens grid stability, and that in turn is a threat to national security. And, you know, first of all, it's mythology. You look at states or other countries like Germany and Denmark that have much higher penetrations of renewables than we do here in the United States. Their grids are more stable. Here in California, of course, we've installed more renewable energy than any other state in the country. And you think about the top 3 threats that we've had in the last 20 years to grid stability, It was the energy crisis in 2001, which was market manipulation from companies like Enron. It was the San Onofre nuclear plant going down in 2013, having to get shut down because of a technical problem suddenly and permanently. And then it was the Aliso Canyon leak. And in all three of those instances, renewables had nothing to do with the grid challenges. And in fact, quite the opposite. They made the problem easier to deal with because they were continuing to operate reliably. But this is precisely the kind of mythology that needs to be dispelled.
Right, so making a national security argument about renewable energy, that's a bit of a stretch. I think your example of pointing to Germany and other countries and the reliability of their grids with a higher penetration of renewables is another story that needs to be told.
Well, you ought to know about national security, having served as Homeland Security Cabinet Secretary in the Obama administration. And I wonder, any further thoughts on that and how you see renewables and clean tech more generally serving our national security?
Well, I think we're always going to have sun and we're always going to have wind, and you start from there. Then you look at how renewable energy actually works and how it does contribute to the reliability of the grid. And you make those factual arguments. We just got to keep pounding that message. And like I said, it's a bit of an uphill battle in D.C., although it seems remarkable to me that an administration from a party that is a big states' rights party would be after preemption of states in this important area.
Right. Well, to that point, if you could change hats for a moment, you were elected governor as a Democrat in what's regarded as a relatively conservative state in Arizona. And I'm just curious how you were able to be successful, because I think some of the same communications are probably applicable now in terms of when you're talking about the environment and so forth. I mean, you mentioned jobs, but how were you able to communicate so successfully in that role and get elected?
Well, and my first election was a really close election. My re-election was not so close, but it was very tight. I think that you need to talk with people directly about what their concerns are and what they want you to do. And you have to persuade them that you're going to wake up every day thinking of problems in a way that concern them and thinking about those problems for them so they can focus on other things. When you're talking about the environment, that's a kind of a big, kind of soft issue. So you have to bring it down into concrete terms. What it means by way of their health, what it means in terms of the planet for their children, and what it means economically for them right now. And, really break it down into those kinds of parts.
Well said. Wise words. I also just want to ask you about the trends you're seeing now with the student body. When I have gone and given talks at various campuses, I look out at the students and the diversity is incredible. And it looks like what it is, which is the future of the state. And I know it's gotten more and more competitive to get in than ever. And the schools are really more highly regarded than they've ever been from what I can see. But just if you could share a little bit about what you're seeing, trends in the student body, particularly as it relates to our topic today.
Well, I think this year we admitted our largest class since World War II.
Wow.
And our most diverse class ever. So, and that's something that we're proud of. And we're seeing in the students, I think, real buy-in to the notion of being carbon neutral by 2025. and contributing in their own way. Like, my understanding is that the shuttle bus here at Irvine, which will be an all-electric fleet, is student-funded and student-operated. Well, I can't think of a more concrete example than that of student interest in this area, and the number of students who are majoring in fields that contribute in this area just keeps going up. So, you know, I think that students are interested in the health of the planet moving forward, and are interested in having a new kind of energy portfolio for the state.
And all of them vote, which is important.
We hope.
We hope. All of them can vote. We have time for one or two questions if there's anyone who has a burning question in the audience.
Right, so we haven't had those direct conversations, but when we were talking earlier about, you know, the state versus the federal government, and I was mentioning the state as a partner, what I have in mind is exactly that, that the state could be a research funding partner, as can private industry. So we need to broaden our vision of where those research dollars are going to be coming from in the light of what I anticipate will happen at the federal level. So I'm glad the faculty is talking about it, because the faculty can help sell that message and demonstrate, you know, the research they're doing and the value of that research and what it's contributing to California.
Okay, last question over here.
Yeah, so our hope and our goal is that we don't reach our goal by using the offset mechanism, that we truly have converted off of fossil fuel. That's going to require some major investment in our energy infrastructure, and you know, we're already planning for that. But my hope is that we don't have to use offsets.
Well, see, this makes me want to enroll in UC system again and be a part of this. No, let's thank President Napolitano for an incredible
Thank you
leadership.
all.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much.